Our next guest is known as the realtor to the stars. Barbara Streisand, Sidney Poitier, just two of the superstars on a very long list who have reached out to Dolly Lenz of Douglas Elliman. She is the top luxury broker in New York City, top by sales in the country. She's sold more than $7.5 billion worth of real estate in her career thus far, more than $2 billion worth of listings on her books right now, and she is joining me right here in the newsroom. Dolly, thanks so much for coming in. First of all, great to see you. The Wall Street Journal reported last week that the number of contracts signed for properties worth $4 million or more was at the highest volume since Lehman Brothers. Is the luxury real estate market, especially in that $4 to $10 million range, coming back?
Oh, there's no question. We're seeing bidding wars. We're seeing price increases. We're seeing sellers pull contracts just prior to being signed. It's crazy. It's almost like that craziness we had a couple of years ago.
So could you say it's 2007, 2006?
No, it really is. In that luxury space only, though.
Who is coming? Who is calling you, Dolly? I mean, has the profile changed at all? I mean, is it just as many Wall Street people? Is it more entertainers? Is it more business people? What's the mix?
You know, it's a lot of foreigners. That's the newest part of the mix. We've always had foreigners, but all of a sudden we're getting a lot more of them, and starting early. So we're seeing parents buying 18-year-old children really fancy places, you know, in order for them to keep it.
I can put myself up for adoption, maybe.
Yeah, exactly, in order to keep it as a family home later. So a lot of that is going on. I mean, much more so than I've ever had to do. And, of course, the hedge funds who are getting their bonuses in cash versus the banks who are getting their bonuses in stock. You know, so a lot of that.
I was going to ask you, as far as the foreigners go, I mean, you and I spoke about a year ago. The dollar had gotten so much weaker, and you had a lot of business coming in from Europe. Are there still a lot of Europeans, or is it just more from Asia? Is it more from emerging market countries where there's just excessive wealth on the top?
Yeah, it's more price-insensitive places. So whether that's the Russian group or whether that's the Chinese group, you know, it's interesting. It's where money is easily gotten and therefore easily spent.
You mentioned cash, and you and I have spoken about this in the past, something that you taught me, actually. I didn't know that above $10 million, most people just pay cash, right?
Right, exactly.
What about the super mortgage, these super jumbo mortgage financing for those who aren't paying cash? Let's say the lower end in your world, which is between $1 and $4 million.
Those people are getting financing. Financing has eased up a bit. However, they're requiring higher down payments, more stringent timelines. So you really can't just say, okay, I have a commitment, I can buy this apartment. There's a whole timeline and a process along with that commitment.
When we spoke in the fall, you said New York City was really this tale of two markets. You said, you know, the high end was getting higher and more frothy, as you just mentioned now. But this lower end, this $1 to $2 million range, was just kind of hurting. You know, there weren't as many bids, there weren't bidding wars, sellers kind of had to drop their prices a little bit. Is that still happening, or is this even, quote unquote, low end getting some support as well?
You know, for the most part, that's still where it was, because those people aren't necessarily getting these big bonuses. A lot of them are still in that sandwich group where they really have to sell something in order to buy something, and that all just makes everything very complicated, where the high end, they're really just buying whether or not they have to sell.
Do you feel like, you mentioned these luxury buyers who are buying maybe for their kids. Are there people who are coming to you as investors, just saying, I just want a safe place to park my money, I don't feel like having this in cash, so I'm going to buy this, even if they don't have kids or that's not a concern?
I'm getting quite a few of those recently, and when I say recently, in the last month. And the reason for that is they're saying, I want to have a big portfolio with a hedge against inflation. So not just gold, but I want to add real estate. And I want to add something that someday I could occupy, but I want to rent it out for the next 9 or 10 years. And then in 10 years, I'll revisit where I am. So that's interesting. That's pretty new.
That last shot on Perry Street is just one of the things we're going to pick up with Dolly Lenz and talk about. She is known as the realtor to the stars. Dolly, we know you sold about $7.5 billion worth of real estate so far in your career. We just had that photo up of the Perry Street property. I've heard reports that some pretty famous people have been looking at that, LeBron James included, so I don't know if that's true, and I know I can't ask you to confirm, but I can ask you what it is like to deal with celebrities. I imagine it's really hard to just do your job.
Well, it makes it harder to do your job only because you're trying to protect them. So you're always trying to run interference, and you have to qualify everybody that comes through, and you have to say, okay, does this person really have a need to purchase a property, or are they really just wanting to come through this property because it's their property? So it's always complicated.
We know A-Rod, at least I'm reading on some blogs this morning, is going to be moving out of the famed 15 CPW. That's where CEO Lloyd Blankfein of Goldman Sachs lives, and many other famous people. So A-Rod on the move as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we have a lot of big name properties certainly up. You mentioned how people are talking to you in this larger sense about wanting to hedge against inflation, which is something that we've been talking a lot about here. How much are people willing to spend to have this be part of their portfolio?
Oh, you know, really, as a percent of net worth, maybe it's not a lot, but we're talking properties that are 10 million, 12 million, 15 million. They want trophy properties. They want irreplaceable properties that will always hold out well in a marketplace.
As far as taste goes, and I've kind of followed you around a little bit from time to time and seen sort of some of these grand dam, like old New York buildings. I've also seen some pretty modern ones with you. How is taste skewing these days from the celebrity crowd?
I would say taste is more on the contemporary bent, but not modern, contemporary. So something that has a fresh look versus something that has a slick look. And I find that's what's today's preference.
Okay, today's preference. Dolly, thanks so much for coming in to talk to us.
Thank you.
Dolly Lenz joining us there. She is the top broker in New York City, and if you measure by sales, the top in the country.